Inselmilkom, sinjuri, sa nibdew il-programm bil-ġrajiet kurrenti, sa nitkellmu ma' Dr. Edward De Bono. Il-intervista sa sir bil-lingwa Ingliża biex nilħu lil dawk li ma jitkellmux bil-Malti u dawk ukoll li preferu il-lingwa Ingliża. Jekk tixtiequ taraw il-Dr. Edward De Bono tistgħu isegwuh pereżempju waqt Net Live. Il-kontenut ta' din l-intervista wkoll tistgħu issibuha bil-Malti fuq Net on Demand. U għalhekk sa nitkellmu miegħu dwar il-każ ta' Vitals-Steward u iżviluppi li saru f'dawn l-aħħar ġimgħat. Thank you very much, Dr. De Bono, for joining our program today.
It's my pleasure.
You were pivotal in bringing forward this case, the case of Vitals and Stewards, together with Dr. Adrian Delia on behalf of the Nationalist Party. A lot has happened in the last few weeks. We've had a lot of content in Maltese, and I'd appreciate some updates in English for those who don't understand Maltese.
Yes, I think the first thing that we should remind our viewers that the case which Dr. Delia had filed as leader of the opposition in his own name as an MP was for the rescission of the 3 hospitals, St. Luke's, Karen Gregg, and the Gozo hospital, to come back to the Maltese people. This case took a number of years for its conclusion, and the Court of Appeal on the 23rd of October 2023 granted Dr. Delia's demands and declared that the emphysema concessions, the temporary emphysema concessions, were built on fraud, collusion between the highest officials in government, in the Labour government, with Vitals and Stewards. I think this has ramifications. It's one of the few times I can recall that a court has declared that the highest officials in government acted fraudulently against the interests of the Maltese people in collusion with Vitals and Stewards to the benefit of Stewards and Vitals.
That decision was taken quite some time ago now.
That was taken in October 2023. After that decision was taken, the leader of the opposition, Dr. Bernard Gregg and Dr. Delia, wrote to the Commissioner of Police and to the State Advocate that they should take action against these highest officials, both criminally and civilly. Unfortunately, neither the Commissioner of Police nor the State Advocate did anything about this. The leader of the opposition, Dr. Gregg, and Dr. Delia demanded that if they are not going to take any action against these corrupt individuals in the Maltese government, they will keep the Commissioner of Police and the State Advocate responsible in damages for their non-action. What is the reason that they have done this? The reason is very simple, because if no action is taken, according to our law, according to Article 1051, capital A of the Civil Code, all those people who acted in a corrupt manner, they are responsible jointly and severally with stewards to bring back the damages that the Maltese people had sustained.
The money that was fraudulently paid to these two companies.
We calculate that there's about 417 million expended from the Maltese coffers to the detriment of the Maltese people. Government is claiming that after the first judgment of first instance, he took action against stewards for them to pay this damage. The truth is that he did not take any action. Stewards, through an international arbitration, asked the arbiter to declare that the Maltese government should pay that infamous 100 million that Dr. Conrad Mitzi signed on our behalf, that even in the event that the Maltese government loses the case, or actually wins the case against Vitals, that 100 million is still due to stewards and Vitals. This is one of the instances where fraud could be seen. How is it possible that the Maltese people have to pay 100 million if they won the case for the rescission of the contracts?
May I please remind you to bring us up to date with the state of the three hospitals?
The state of the three hospitals is in a dire state, totally abandoned, where rats are running around St. Luke's, where Karen Gregg has not been refurbished, where the Gozo hospital hasn't yet started to be erected anew. So this is the situation that they're in. They've taken structural damages from our coffers when nothing has been spent in that which they had to provide for us. But the most important thing is this. So it is not true that government took action. It is Steward who had taken action against the Maltese government. As soon as they were notified with these arbitration proceedings, the government filed what is called a counterclaim. And in that counterclaim, they are demanding damages. The state advocate is being assisted by a Maltese law firm in the endeavors, and we know that since then, stewards have filed for bankruptcy.
Absolutely. That brought things to a head.
So this obviously, we will never be paid from stewards the damages that we have sustained. So who is going to pay us damages, as you rightly put it? From where are we going to retrieve the money which has been stolen? Undoubtedly, the people in the highest officials in government who are involved, and we know now, and we knew then as well who were involved, Joseph Muscat, Conrad Mitzi, Keith Kembry, Edward Cicluna, permanent secretaries in the government and ex-permanent secretaries in the government, all played a part, including the Indus people who had to do due diligence and didn't do so. That is, Emmanuel Castagna, Robert Borch, and James Kamenzuli in particular.
What are your comments about Dr. Chris Fearn and the developments over the last 2 weeks?
Chris Fearn is responsible in damages as well, because as a Minister of Health, he said that it was the right deal. The Court of Appeal, in its judgment, referred to this phrase, right deal, and they said it is no right deal at all, but all those involved who had a duty to protect the Maltese people failed them. And because they had a duty to ensure that no payments of a structural level, I'm not talking about payments of employees' wages or paramedics' wages, I'm talking about the structural damages that were being paid, should not have been approved neither by the Minister of Health, nor by the Finance Minister, nor by the permanent secretaries in their offices. And for this, they as well are responsible in damages together with Vitals and Stewards. But since then we had further developments. After this judgment and after Dr. Delia and Dr. Bernard Gregg filed this action against the state advocate, demanding that he takes action against the Maltese people that were involved in collusion with Vitals, the Magistrates' Court, as a court of inquiry, found that there were 39 different persons, physical persons and moral persons, who were responsible for this fraud. Mm-hmm. Magistrate Gabriella Vella closed her inquiry and sent the acts of the proceedings to the Attorney General. The Attorney General didn't find anything amiss with what Magistrate Vella had filed in her inquiry, because according to law, if she did find something amiss, the Attorney General had a duty to send back the acts and asked questions for the magistrate to fill in the gaps which she would have considered left out by the inquiring magistrate.
And what are your comments about Professor Edward Cicluna holding the position of Governor of the Central Bank of Malta?
He should absolutely resign. Absolutely resign. He can't represent our country in the European Central Bank, and I'm pretty sure that his companions in the European Central Bank will not let him sit at table with them. He is a disgrace to our country. He should have taken action when he should have, that is initially, when he realized that he was not part of the kitchen cabinet, don't forget that, of Joseph Muscat, that he was being left out from all that was being stated, and he should resign forthwith.
In your opinion, what role should the financial regulator, the MFSA, play in all this?
If the financial regulator wants to do his job without being left under the heel of the Prime Minister or the Cabinet, they ought to know that people like Edward Cicluna are a disgrace, not only to their profession, but also to the institution they represent. In Edward Cicluna's case, at this particular moment in time, the Central Bank of Malta, and being, as we ought to be, a reputable financial center, he's just not the guy to be there. He has to move away because he's tarnishing our name. And we depend on investments coming from abroad who want to come in and invest in our country as a stable financial center.
Do you think there'll be any repercussions as a jurisdiction, to Malta as a jurisdiction?
I have no doubt that we will have severe repercussions if no viable solution is going to be found, and where the accused being prosecuted, if found guilty, should bear the consequences of their actions.
I believe stewards have a portfolio of real estate.
Well, a portfolio, according to what I've read in the papers, they've got a portfolio of 1 billion euros, but they've got another 10 million in debt. So basically, their portfolio is in the red. And in no way can we retrieve what has been stolen from us, not only by them, but also by these highest officials in the Labour government.
Mm-hmm. What else can you tell us about this scandal? I mean, it's a big saga now.
So now we are waiting judgment from the first hall of the Civil Court, where we are demanding that the state advocate actually takes action against these Maltese people involved in this criminality in order that they be held jointly and severally responsible with stewards and vitals and pay back the money which has been stolen, which is, as I have said, till 2022, amounting to circa 417 million euros. So, the property, the assets of these Maltese people who acted in collusion with stewards should also make good for our loss.
What are your comments about the reaction from former Prime Minister Joseph Muscat?
Well, I thought that corrupt Muscat always acted as if he is the most serene man in town. But listening to him on television last Monday, I think, or Tuesday, I can't recollect the day, he was, I believe, in the most desperate of situations, like a cornered rat, wanting to butcher all people who caught out his crime and wanting to tear to bits the Nationalist Party. If this is not vendetta, when one ought to know that the persons who actually brought over this inquiry, and correctly so, were Republica, which was an NGO who wanted to look after the interests of our country and pursued this action through the normal channels. Yet Muscat believes that he wants to butcher the PN because he believes that they were, or they are, responsible for what he has been accused of. He thinks that this is a second E-grant, and by the way, E-grant has not yet been determined who owned that company, so it could still be Muscat or his wife or any other person, but still...
So in your opinion, that's not a closed case?
Of course it's not a closed case. The magistrate decided that from the evidence which was brought over, there was no evidence which at that particular moment in time could inculpate Muscat or his wife. But still, if further evidence will be brought to light, Muscat can still be found responsible for E-grant. But today, the accusations Muscat is facing do not concern E-grant. The accusations Muscat is facing are that he fraudulently, he was involved in money laundering, he acted against the interests of the state, he was in a position to stop a crime in his public position but failed to do so, and these obviously bear a maximum detention and imprisonment of 18 years and fines running into millions of euros. But the point is, at this particular moment in time, Muscat is presumed innocent until found guilty. But let's make things clear. When we're talking of money laundering offences, with regards to money laundering offences, Article 2 of Chapter 373 of the Laws of Malta state that any circumstantial evidence will stand in a court of law against a person accused with those crimes. And it is up to Muscat that now he proves that that circumstantial evidence should not bear any consequences on him. So in actual fact, the burden of proof shifts from the prosecution onto Muscat to defend himself against these allegations and the circumstantial evidence that could be brought against him by the prosecution.
What are your comments? I'd like to refer to the loan that the Bank of Valletta granted to Stewards Healthcare. Now that stewards are in receivership, what are the implications to the financial services sector in Malta?
Well, Bank of Valletta is home and dry on this because the Maltese government issued a declaration that in the event that stewards and vitals do not pay what is due to the bank, the Maltese government has to make do for the lack of payment. In the circumstances, the point is, which one should investigate, is how Bank of Valletta did not do any due diligence on vitals and steward and still afforded them a loan as if nothing happened, most probably, I presume, because they must have had some pressure from the powers that be. But it is the duty of Bank of Valletta to come clean in this particular situation. They have to prove that they did this due diligence and that they should give peace of mind to the shareholders of the company that they acted correctly and diligently in the circumstances. Bank of Valletta has a lot to answer in the circumstances.
Do you think they will come clean, as you put it? And is there an impact on
I think the
business sector in Malta?
I think there's the annual general meeting coming up in the coming days, and the shareholders should ask the right questions to the board of directors and see what has actually happened to the due diligence they should have undertaken prior to giving out the loan to stewards.
As this case unfolds so close to the European Parliament elections and the local elections, do you think there will be an impact on the electorate?
I presume so. I think when the highest officials in government have acted fraudulently and not in the interests of the Maltese people, as declared by the Court of Appeal, this should have an impact on the elections.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching our interview with Dr. Edward De Bono with regard to the latest developments on the Vitals-Steward scandal. He was actually pivotal in bringing this forward with Dr. Adrian Delia on behalf of the Nationalist Party. I would also like to remind you that on the 8th of June, you will have the opportunity to vote for the European Parliament elections and the local council elections. I urge you to vote for the candidates on the Nationalist Party ticket. There are 8 candidates who you would have met during this program and other programs on Net TV. To make full use of your vote, you need to select your preferred candidate and give them your number 1 vote, and then carry on voting for the 7 other candidates. I remind you again that it's 8 candidates for the Nationalist Party. Should you have any comments, any questions about how you can vote, please contact ELCOM on the number that appears on the screen. I'm Leah Hogg. Thank you for watching for Net TV.